Peyton Nolan didn't mean to fall, especially not face first, into a pile of autumn leaves in the middle of a Brooklyn playground, but that's exactly what happened. Right in front of a 6-year-old with a juice box and a man with the bluest eyes she'd ever seen. "Are you okay?" the man asked, crouching beside her, offering a hand that was rough but warm. His voice was low, steady, comforting, like it belonged to someone who knew how to fix things. Peyton blinked up at him, stunned, as she brushed a leaf from her cheek. "I was trying to avoid the scooter," she muttered, nodding toward the child now giggling nearby. "Didn't expect the ground to betray me." The man chuckled. "We call that the Victor effect. He has a habit of turning every flat surface into a racetrack." The boy Victor apparently grinned and waved. "Hi, lady, are you a ninja?" Peyton laughed despite herself. "Not today." "I'm Sawyer Adams," the man said, still holding out his hand. "And that's Victor, my son." She hesitated only a second before taking it. His grip was firm but gentle as he helped her to her feet. Peyton dusted herself off, trying not to wince as her knee throbbed. "Peyton," she said, "thanks." "You sure you're okay?" "Just my pride," she said, glancing around. A few parents had seen, but no one seemed overly concerned. Still, she felt ridiculous. Her sleek black coat was smudged with dirt and a strand of hair stuck to her lip. Perfect. Sawyer seemed to assess her for a second longer than necessary. "Let me grab some wipes from the bag. Victor's always sticky, so come prepared." "I'm fine, really," she said quickly, but he was already walking to the bench where a worn backpack sat. He rustled through it like a pro dad, pulling out a packet of wipes and handing her one without a word. She cleaned her hands, trying not to notice the way his white t-shirt clung to his chest, or how his jeans looked like they'd been worn 100 times, but fit him perfectly. "You here with someone?" he asked casually, glancing around. "No, just needed fresh air." It wasn't a lie, exactly. She'd stepped out of a boardroom on the Upper East Side, ditched the car and driver, and wandered until she'd ended up here. She hadn't planned to land in a playground, much less on the ground. Sawyer nodded. "Well, lucky for you, this is the safest park in Brooklyn. Victor's the unofficial mayor." "I am," Victor added, zooming by again. She smiled. "I can see that." "You work around here?" Sawyer asked. Peyton paused, sort of. She wasn't about to tell a stranger in a park that she was the CEO of Nolan Tech Industries. Not after nearly face planting in front of his child. "Well," Sawyer said, standing with a little stretch, "if you're not in a rush, Victor and I were just about to grab some hot chocolate. There's a place down the street. Best whipped cream in the city. You're welcome to join us." Peyton hesitated. She never said yes to random strangers, but something about his easy smile made her feel oddly safe, and she had nowhere else to be, not for another hour. "All right, I'm in." Victor whooped like they'd just won a prize. The cafe was small and warm, with mismatched furniture and the smell of cinnamon in the air. They took a table by the window. Victor dove into his whipped cream like it was the last dessert on earth. Sawyer sipped his drink and glanced at Peyton. "So, Peyton, what do you do?" She stirred her hot chocolate. "Consulting." He raised an eyebrow, amused. "That sounds vague." "It's supposed to. Makes me sound more mysterious." His laugh was deep and real. "Fair enough." "And you," she asked, "what do you do?" "I'm a contractor. Renovations, mostly. Kitchens, bathrooms, that kind of thing. I used to work with a big company, but now freelance. Gives me more time with Victor." She looked at him differently then. There was something in the way he said his son's name full of pride, and something she couldn't quite place. "You're raising him on your own." "Yeah," he said quietly. "His mom left when he was 2, moved out west. We haven't heard much since." "Oh," she said softly, "that's hard." He shrugged. "It's life. Victor's a good kid. Smart, loud, keeps me grounded. She smiled. He's lucky to have you. Sawyer met her gaze, eyes steady. Thanks. So are you always this mysterious, or is that just today? Peyton tilted her head. Maybe I like keeping people guessing. He grinned. Maybe I like that. They spent an hour talking, about nothing and everything. Peyton laughed more than she had in weeks. Sawyer was grounded, funny, honest. Nothing like the men who filled her world of deals, mergers, and billion-dollar valuations. When she finally stood, she realized how much time had passed. I should go. Sawyer nodded, standing too. Thanks for joining us. Victor waved with sticky fingers. Bye, Ninja Lady. She smiled. Bye, Mayor. Sawyer walked her to the corner. You sure you're all right? No lingering injuries. Just a bruised ego, but I'll survive. He nodded, then hesitated. Can I see you again? She blinked. You want to? He looked genuinely surprised. Of course I do. You're interesting, and you made Victor laugh, which is basically a miracle. Peyton exhaled, unsure why she felt nervous. All right, I'd like that. He pulled out a pen and scribbled his number on a napkin. Call me when Mystery Peyton's ready to reveal her secrets. She folded the napkin and tucked it into her pocket. We'll see. As she turned and walked away, she felt his eyes on her. And for the first time in months, maybe longer, she smiled. Not her CEO smile, not her press conference smile, but a real one. She didn't know it yet, but that moment falling, literally and figuratively, was the start of everything. Peyton didn't call right away. For 3 days, she stared at the napkin tucked into her leather planner beneath a stack of urgent acquisitions and shareholder memos. The handwriting strong, a little messy, undeniably masculine, was the only thing in her briefcase not tied to a billion-dollar empire. On the 4th day, she pressed the intercom. Tell Marcus I'll review the contracts after lunch. I need 45 minutes, no interruptions. Her assistant's reply was instant. Yes, MS, Nolan. She left the office 30 stories above Manhattan, ditched the elevator ride for the stairs, and stepped out into the wind without her coat. The air was biting, but her skin felt alive. The cafe Sawyer had mentioned wasn't far. She found it again without effort, tucked between a florist and a music shop, with a crooked sign and a heart drawn in chalk on the door. He was inside. Sawyer stood behind the counter in a black apron, sleeves rolled to the elbows, hand wrapped around a steaming coffee pot. He looked up just as she stepped in, and for a moment, his expression shifted from surprise to something warmer, something quiet. Well, if it isn't Mystery Woman, he said, setting the pot aside. You came back. I did warn you I might, she replied, brushing a curl behind her ear. Didn't expect to find you playing barista. He leaned on the counter. Friend of mine owns the place. Fill in on Wednesdays, better than watching reruns and fixing cabinet doors. Peyton glanced around. The cafe was mostly empty, just a couple in the corner and an older man reading a paperback. Victor's at school, she asked. He nodded. 1st grade, he's lobbying for a dog, claims he's emotionally ready. She laughed. Is he? No, Sawyer said, but he made a PowerPoint. It had transitions. Peyton rested her palms on the counter. You said the whipped cream here was worth the trip. Came to test that claim. He pulled 2 mugs from the shelf. I'll warn you, once you've had it, everything else tastes like disappointment. The whipped cream did not disappoint. Sawyer slid a plate of warm banana bread across the table as they sat by the window, sunlight catching the edge of his jaw. Peyton watched him, the way he tore the bread in half without asking, then pushed the larger piece toward her. I've been thinking, he said, you're not a consultant. She raised a brow. No. You're too careful with your words, too practiced. You're used to people listening to you, not the other way around. She sipped her drink. Maybe I just read a lot of spy novels. He leaned back, arms crossed. You didn't flinch when that guy on the street yelled. Most people do. You just tilted your head like you were evaluating him. Her fingers tensed around the mug. You're observant. I'm a contractor, remember. I notice cracks. Her breath caught. Something in his tone made her chest tighten. Not suspicion, not threat, just quiet curiosity and patience. I run a company, she said finally. That's what I do. His eyes didn't widen, he didn't lean in, he just nodded once. Big one. Global. He took that in slowly. That explained the heels and the watch the other day. I wasn't expecting to trip in front of a jungle gym. You wore it well, he said, even with leaves in your hair. She laughed, startled. You're impossible. I've heard worse. Their eyes locked. The moment stretched unspoken, humming with something that felt too personal for a second meeting. Then the bell above the door jingled and Sawyer stood. Refill. Please. She watched him walk away, wondering what on earth she was doing. She hadn't dated in over a year. Not seriously. Not since the fallout with Charles, the finance mogul with a yacht, a temper, and a lawyer who made threats in writing. Sawyer returned with 2 fresh mugs. So, what's your company do? She hesitated. Technology, infrastructure, mostly software development and diagnostic systems for medical institutions. Sounds important. It is. He studied her face. Ever get tired of it? She blinked. Of what? Being important. The question caught her off guard. People usually asked about profit margins, public offerings, her next keynote. Not that. Sometimes, she admitted, but I built it from nothing. He nodded. That's something. A pause. Do you always ask such loaded questions over banana bread? She asked. I like seeing how people answer. Peyton leaned forward. And what have you gathered? That you're used to hiding in plain sight, but you don't want to anymore. She stared at him. He wasn't wrong. I should go, she said, standing too quickly. I have a meeting. Sawyer didn't stop her. He just moved to the register, tore a receipt from the counter, and scribbled something on the back. Next time, he said, handing it to her, you pick the place. Bring your secrets or don't. She took it without looking. Outside, the city felt too bright, the noise too loud. She stepped into the first cab she saw and told herself not to turn around. Back at her office, she unfolded the receipt. It wasn't a number this time. Just a note. You're allowed to be both powerful and seen. S. She stared at it until her assistant knocked, announcing the board was waiting. Peyton stood, straightened her jacket, and walked into the room. But she carried the note in her pocket. And it changed something in her. The third time Peyton saw Sawyer, it was unplanned. She was standing outside a brownstone in Park Slope, hair pinned high, navy wool coat belted tight against the cold. A mandatory gala was underway behind her, full of polished donors and political handshakes. She'd lasted 47 minutes inside long enough to give a speech, shake hands with 2 hospital directors, and dodge the man who still introduced himself with, "Remember me from Harvard." She'd stepped out for air, phone in hand, debating whether to slip away entirely, when a familiar voice stopped her. You always sneak out of parties, or is tonight special? Sawyer stood under the street lamp, hands in his coat pockets, a canvas shopping bag slung over one shoulder. His hair was damp from the mist, and a paperback book stuck out of the bag beside what looked like a bunch of celery. Her heart knocked once hard. I could ask you the same, she said, grocery run after midnight. He gestured toward the corner. Neighborhood co-op. Forgot to get milk earlier. Victor's very particular about his cereal to liquid ratio. Peyton felt her mouth curve before she could stop it. Of course he is. Sawyer took a step closer, his gaze sweeping over her. You look like you stepped out of a museum exhibit, in a good way. In a good way needs work, she said, but her pulse fluttered. I'm trying not to say you look intimidating and beautiful at the same time, he said, but I think I just failed. She glanced at the building behind her. It's a fundraiser. I was expected to impress. Did you? I doubt it. Then they weren't paying attention. He wasn't teasing, and that was the problem, or maybe the reason she hadn't walked away yet. She tilted her chin. You live near here. 3 blocks that way, he said. Second floor walk up with questionable plumbing and a view of the fire escape. She hesitated then, without thinking, asked, walk me. He didn't ask where, he just nodded and fell into step beside her. They walked in silence for a block, the city quieter than usual, the mist softening the edges of everything. You always dress like that at midnight, he asked eventually. Only when someone's writing a 6-figure check for pediatric oncology. Important night. Necessary, she said, not the same thing. He nodded. You don't like being looked at like your glass. Her eyes snapped to his. No, I don't. Good, he said. You don't look fragile. You look like you could rebuild a cathedral with your bare hands and yell at the architect while doing it. She shook her head, laughing under her breath. That's the strangest compliment I've ever received. But not inaccurate, he said. They turned the corner, a cat darting across the sidewalk in front of them. Peyton slowed, tucking her arms tighter around herself. I got the job offer when I was 23, she said suddenly. It wasn't supposed to be mine, but the guy ahead of me overdosed the week before final interviews. Sawyer didn't interrupt. I took it anyway. Told myself I'd earned it, even if the opening came from something awful. But I never stopped wondering if I was just the next warm body on the list. She didn't know why she told him. She never said that part aloud, not even to herself. I'm not judging, he said, but I don't think you're the kind of person who gets handed things. She looked away. You don't even know me. I know you spend your nights at fundraisers instead of champagne galas. I know you walk out when things stop making sense, and I know you didn't have to stop and talk to me, but you did. They reached the entrance to a small building with peeling paint and a crooked mailbox. Sawyer stopped at the bottom step. You want to come up? He asked. Just coffee. Victor's at his cousin's tonight, and I make better coffee than that cafe. Peyton looked up at the building. Her driver was 3 blocks back. Her phone was buzzing with unread messages, and she hadn't had a real moment to breathe since Monday. She nodded. All right, coffee. His apartment was small but clean, lived in. A dinosaur toy rested on the windowsill, and a stack of art supplies leaned against the wall near the table. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon and something warmer like cedar and soap. Sawyer poured her a cup from a French press, sliding it across the table without ceremony. No whipped cream this time, he said, but I do have honey. I'll survive, she said, wrapping her hands around the mug. They sat by the window, city lights flickering through the glass. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then, why me? She asked. You could have let that moment in the park be a funny story. Why follow up? Why keep asking? He leaned his elbows on the table. Because you looked like someone who forgot how to be surprised. And then, when you laughed, it looked like you remembered. Her throat tightened. That's dangerous. Maybe, he said, but so is hiding from your own life. She stared at him, then stood abruptly, walking to the window. You make it sound simple. I didn't say it was easy, he said from behind her. I said it was worth it. She turned slowly. You think I'm worth the effort? I think you already know you are, he said, but don't think you hear it from anyone who doesn't want something. Her chest ached in a way that wasn't entirely familiar. She crossed the room and stopped just in front of him. I'm not used to people seeing me without asking for a title first. I'm not used to someone listening when I talk about Victor, he said. We're both out of practice. She reached for his hand. And when their fingers threaded together, it didn't feel like a mistake. It felt like something beginning. The first person Peyton told was her sister. They sat on the rooftop of Peyton's penthouse, the Manhattan skyline stretching behind them, both wrapped in thick wool blankets as wind swept over the terrace. Evelyn cradled a glass of wine while Peyton turned her untouched whiskey around in her hand. You're looking at that glass like it insulted your shoes, Evelyn said, arching a brow. What's going on? Peyton hesitated, then set the glass down. I think I'm seeing someone. Evelyn blinked once, then leaned forward. A real someone, not a he's charming but lives on a different continent someone. Yes, real Brooklyn contractor, single dad. Evelyn blinked again. Are you having a stroke? Peyton laughed, finally picking up the whiskey. I fell in front of his kid. Literally, that's how we met. Evelyn whistled low. You're dating a man who saw you faceplant. He didn't laugh. He offered me a hand and a wipe. A wipe? Peyton nodded. From his son's backpack, it was sticky. Evelyn shook her head. I haven't seen you smile like this since. Don't even know. I don't know what I'm doing, Peyton admitted. But when I'm around him, I don't feel like I'm carrying the entire board of directors on my back. Evelyn tilted her head. And he doesn't care that you're Peyton Nolan. He knows, I told him. And he said I look like could rebuild a cathedral with my bare hands. Evelyn grinned. I like him. So did Peyton. In the weeks that followed, their worlds threaded together slowly and without fanfare. There were no overnight declarations or press releases, just quiet evenings in Sawyer's apartment, takeout containers between them while Victor showed her how to play impossible card games he made up on the spot. One night, Sawyer invited her to the school's spring fair. Peyton hesitated before saying yes. The idea of mingling with other parents, of being recognized, made her skin buzz. But when Victor called to ask if she'd come watch him perform in the class skit, she said yes. The school gym was loud, chaotic, and smelled faintly of popcorn and washable paint. Peyton wore jeans and a slate gray sweater, having left her driver and assistant behind. Sawyer met her at the door, one hand holding a roll of raffle tickets, the other already reaching for hers without hesitation. You okay? He asked as they weaved through the crowd. I haven't been in a gym since high school, she said. I forgot how loud it gets. You get used to it, sort of. Victor's skit was chaotic, charming, and completely impossible to follow. He played a talking tree who gave advice to a lost hiker and delivered his lines with theatrical flair. Peyton clapped until her hands stung. Afterward, Sawyer led her outside into the brisk evening. He paused at the steps. You didn't have to come tonight. I wanted to, she said. He looked at her differently then, eyes searching. You say that like you're still convincing yourself. She leaned against the railing. I'm used to my time being scheduled. Every hour has a reason. With you, there's no reason, and I've never had that before. Sawyer let that settle before he spoke. You don't owe me anything, Peyton. I know, she said, but I want something from you. He raised a brow, cautious. What? Time, not pieces of it, all of it. His breath caught, just barely. You're saying you want this for real. I already do, she said, but I want to stop pretending it's temporary. Sawyer stepped closer. I don't have a yacht. I don't fly to Geneva for lunch. I don't want Geneva, she said. I want the man who made me laugh when my knee was bleeding. He exhaled slowly, then took her face in his hands. No audience, no fanfare, just the city behind them and the quiet between heartbeats. I love you, he said. It was not dramatic, it was not shouted, but it was real. And Peyton, who had stood in front of thousands, had never heard anything louder. She said it back. The next morning, she called her legal counsel and her board chair. She told them she was stepping back for 6 months. No press release, no public scandal, just a shift. I built Nolan Tech, she told them, but I'm not going to lose myself inside it. She moved into a brownstone on the edge of Carroll Gardens 2 weeks later, a place with creaky stairs and a real key instead of a biometric lock. She and Sawyer painted the walls themselves badly. Victor chose the color of the kitchen, a lime green that made them all wince, but they left it anyway. On the first warm Saturday in April, Sawyer walked into the living room holding a small box. Peyton looked up from the couch. What's that? He opened it to reveal a ring simple, elegant, a single diamond set in brushed platinum. No speech, no preamble. I want you in every room I build. I want you in every breakfast conversation with Victor. I want you in every grocery line and every thunderstorm and every slow morning when the world feels quiet. She stared at the ring, then at him. I love you, he said again, and I know it's fast and messy, and we're too different in every way that probably matters, but I want you, all of you. Peyton didn't cry, she didn't tremble. She reached for the ring and slid it on, then kissed him like she'd been waiting to breathe. They married in the park where they met, under the exact same tree. Victor stood proudly between them in a suit 2 sizes too big, holding a juice box in one hand and a ring pillow in the other. No press, no headlines, just their people. Evelyn gave the toast. She fell, she said, raising her glass, and for once she let someone catch her. When Sawyer danced with Peyton that night, the world didn't disappear, it expanded. Bigger, louder, messier, softer. And for the first time, Peyton didn't feel like she had something to prove. She just had someone to hold. And that was enough. Victor's shoelaces were still untied when he darted across the small backyard, chasing a paper airplane he'd launched from the porch. Peyton watched from the French doors, one hand resting against the frame, the other holding a mug of jasmine tea. The grass was still wet from the morning rain, and the sky above Carroll Gardens had softened to a pale peach as the sun dipped lower. Sawyer stepped up behind her, wrapping an arm around her waist and resting his chin atop her shoulder. He's going to face-plant straight into the flower bed, he murmured. She tilted her head slightly. He'll learn. Or he'll eat dirt. No difference, really. He kissed her temple. You holding up? She turned to look at him. It's been 3 months. I'm getting used to not waking up to 50 emails. More like 200. Still not checking them. Proud of you. Peyton leaned into him, her voice quieter now. It's strange. Keep thinking I've forgotten something, like I should be racing to a meeting or preparing for a call. You're allowed to rest, Peyton. I know, but it feels like a rebellion. He smiled against her skin. Good, you were overdue for one. Victor shrieked, triumphantly catching the paper plane mid-air before tumbling into the grass. He popped back up with a muddy grin. I'm flying it again, he shouted. Peyton stepped outside, barefoot, letting the grass soak into her skin. Just don't break the neighbor's window this time. I won't, probably. She laughed as Sawyer followed her out, brushing his hand along hers before heading to the grill. He'd insisted on learning to cook something besides eggs, and tonight was his third attempt at cedar plank salmon. The first time had ended with smoke and a fire alarm. The second, accidental perfection. Peyton was cautiously optimistic. As he adjusted the heat, she sat on the edge of the porch, watching the way the evening light caught in Victor's hair. For the first time, the ache in her chest, the one she'd carried for years, the one born of expectations and loneliness, was gone. Not dulled, not buried. Gone. "Do you ever miss it?" Sawyer asked, glancing over from the grill. "The noise, the pressure." She considered it. "Sometimes, but I don't miss the version of myself I had to be to survive it." He nodded, turning back to the fish. "I thought I needed power to feel safe," she said, "but I was just building walls." Sawyer didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was softer. "You're still powerful, but now you're also free." Dinner was simple salmon, grilled asparagus, and lemony couscous. They ate on the porch, Victor alternating between bites and dramatic retellings of his paper plane's journey across the wild backyard wilderness. Afterward, Peyton tucked Victor into bed, listening as he listed all the names he wanted to give the dog they were still negotiating about. "I'm leaning toward Captain Zoom," he said sleepily. She kissed his forehead. "We'll revisit that." Back downstairs, she found Sawyer in the living room, barefoot, flipping through a box of old records he'd found at a flea market. He held one up triumphantly. "Ada James, you in?" She nodded, walking over and placing her hands on his chest as the first notes played. He pulled her in, swaying gently to the music. "We never did a first dance," she said. "Now's a good time." They moved slowly, the room lit only by the glow of the lamp and the soft flicker from the fireplace. She rested her head against his shoulder. "Do you know how many offers I've had to go back?" she murmured. "Probably dozens." 63. He tensed slightly. "Do you want to?" "No." He looked down at her. "You sure?" "I'm exactly where I want to be." He kissed her then, slow, deep, and full of everything they'd built from that first messy fall in the park to the quiet victories of dinner tables and school plays. Later that week, they hosted a small gathering, just friends and family. Evelyn brought wine and a new boyfriend. Sawyer's sister arrived with her twins and a box of cookies she claimed were healthy, though Victor promptly declared them suspicious. The backyard buzzed with laughter and the clinking of plates. Peyton stood at the grill this time, apron over a cream blouse, flipping vegetables while Sawyer chased Victor around with a water balloon. At one point, Evelyn joined her. "You're different," she said. "Lighter." "I feel lighter." "You don't miss the skyline view." "I have a better one now." When the sun dipped low, Sawyer lit the string lights above the yard. Peyton sat on the porch steps, Victor curled up beside her, wrapped in a towel and half asleep, his hand in hers. Sawyer dropped down behind them, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Tomorrow," he said, "we go get the dog." She laughed. "Captain Zoom." Victor won the vote. I tried to counter with Sir Barkington, but he threatened to hold his breath until June. "Sounds about right." He kissed her cheek. "You're happy." "I am." "You trust it." She turned to look at him. "Yes." He didn't say anything else. He just held her, the night settling around them, soft and full and safe. A week later, they brought home a golden retriever puppy who promptly chewed through one of Peyton's heels and was forgiven instantly. Victor named him Captain Zoom. The name stuck. Sawyer finished renovating the second floor of their brownstone by hand, turning the back room into a studio for Peyton. Not an office, a space just for her. She painted the walls herself, filled the shelves with books, and finally finished the novel she'd started years ago and never let herself write. She published it under a pen name. It hit the bestseller list within a month. Victor grew taller, louder, and more curious. He called Peyton Mom for the first time on a Tuesday morning, mouth full of cereal, like it was the most natural thing in the world. She cried in the laundry room for 10 minutes before composing herself. On their 2-year anniversary, Sawyer surprised her with a secluded cabin in the Catskills, no cell reception, a fireplace, and a deck that overlooked a lake. They spent 3 days without distractions. Just each other, the sound of wind through trees, and the quiet joy of knowing neither of them had anywhere else to be. One night, as they lay beneath a quilt, Sawyer brushed her hair back and looked at her the same way he had the night they met. "You changed everything," he whispered. "So did you." They fell asleep tangled together, the stars above them, the world at peace. And neither of them ever looked back.